Hello and welcome to the trash, and today we have to recap and review Season 2, Episode 5 of Tough as Nails. That's just how it goes at this point. I gotta review all the episodes because that's just how I am. So, let's get into Season 2, Episode 5. So we start off with, obviously, the aftermath of Angel punching out and how emotional that was. And like I said, Dirty Hands is gonna win. Angel has all of his focus on helping Dirty Hands win. There's no way Dirty Hands isn't gonna win from now on. I mean, Savage Crew might be able to squeak out one or two wins, but Dirty Hands is definitely taking that title of, like, at the end, best team. Angel has nothing else to focus on. So if Angel's putting his entire heart and soul into Dirty Hands, you best believe Dirty Hands is going to win this whole thing. At least in my opinion. I could be wrong. So the team competition is to prepare a soccer stadium from like a concert venue to like a soccer stadium to just convert it, which I've underestimated how much work that would take. Like, honestly, for this show, I've underestimated a lot of stuff, but that's what I like about the show is it's showing me how difficult a lot of the jobs they do are, and I think that's what it does for a lot of people. So, but yeah, they gotta convert a soccer stadium into a soccer game because it was recently used as a concert venue. And the bosses for this round were Freight Train and Sarah, which I'm starting to think Sarah has some good team leader qualities. I think she's sort of transitioning into that type of player where they're good at the team competition, but they're not that great at the individual competition. I mean, Sarah's better than Angel at the individual competition, obviously, because Angel's punched out, but I wouldn't, because Sarah hasn't won an individual competition yet, but she hasn't really been in danger of going into overtime, so I wouldn't say she's bad at individual, but I'd just say she's better at the team portion, and that's why they keep electing her as crew boss. So, like, the first part of the challenge was to remove all the plastic tiles on the floor and put them on a pallet, and you had to unlock them. And then you had to repaint the lines, and you had to set up the goalposts, which are incredibly heavy. I don't know how Dirty Hands pulled out this win. I knew they were going to, but like once the whole thing like started, and Dirty Hands started getting really behind, I was like, is Dirty Hands gonna pull this one out? They do, but I was kind of getting worried there for a second because with how long it was taking Freight Train to paint the lines, yeah, he was being very meticulous and careful about it, but he was still going incredibly slow. I just love the comparison they put up on the screen. That was funny. Freight Train picked up the pace a little bit, and Phil even pointed out that he's going twice as fast as he was before, which is not saying much. And yeah, we saw more of Scott and his leadership role, which is interesting because they elected Sarah as the crew boss. But I think Scott kind of always doubles as like a second crew boss. That's kind of the vibes he gives off. Is like, you want to look at Scott to see what you should be doing, because Scott's just the type of guy who knows what he's doing, and he's probably Savage Crew's best hope for victory at this point. And then you had the moment between Sarah and Knuckles about the whole thing where Sarah says they lost because they only had 2 guys and 3 girls, which, when I first heard that, I was like, what's that got to do with anything? And Liz felt the same way and said, wait, what's that got to do with anything? And they had a conversation there, and that was a nice moment, I guess. Yeah, for the team competition, it was actually a really interesting one. Like, I really liked the team competition. The overtime competition is probably even better. I wouldn't say the individual competition. I think the individual competition was pretty lackluster, but team competition and overtime, they were pretty good. They were pretty interesting. I don't know. It's just setting up chairs did not seem interesting to me, which is what they had to do for the individual competition. Correctly assemble and replace 7 missing seats in the soccer stadium. And they had like their own workstations and stuff, which kind of proved as some difficulties for people like Arida, Liz, and Scott. And they even tried to like show Scott like mess up a little bit. Zeus was the one who said, yeah, I hope Scott messes up. He could mess up at any moment. And then it immediately cuts to Scott messing up, which at that point I knew Scott was gonna win. Like, they're trying to give him any adversity possible, so just to throw you off the scent. But yeah, Scott won the individual competition. Very minor setback that was really nothing, but they made it out like it was such a big deal, which I thought was funny. Zeus came in second, Sarah came in third, Freight Train in fourth, Marilyn fifth, Swifty sixth, and then Arida in seventh, which means Liz and Sally had to go into overtime. And now the overtime challenge was actually really interesting. I like the overtime challenge. Sally and Liz had to replace empty beer kegs, then load them to the back of a truck. From there, they had to correctly pour 5 beers. The first one to complete it won. I guess you could say it was kind of boring with the way it played out because Liz kind of had a lead very early on and it just kind of carried out throughout. But at least the challenge was interesting to where it held my attention, because in other overtime challenges where someone gets an early lead, I'm like, okay, this person's gonna win. There's no really tells that say they're gonna mess up or anything. Like, Liz, she didn't even mess up at all. Like, she had that one thing where she foamed up the keg too much, and that was a slight setback, but I mean, Sally just wasn't gonna be able to catch up. As soon as Liz poured like her fourth beer, I knew that Liz was gonna make it, and I had to say goodbye to Sally, which sucked. I liked Sally. Sally had to punch out, and yeah, I mean, Sally was one of my favorites on the show, definitely. But I guess we can get my updated rankings now. Rankings didn't really change that much. I mean, obviously at the bottom here, they're not gonna change because these people are out. Tara, Mikey, Angel, and now Sally, unfortunately. So now we're moving on to the top 8, the 8 people left in the individual competition, ranked based on how likely I think they are to win. You already know my top 4 and probably even my top 5 at this point. So, I mean, the only point of intrigue is numbers 8, 7, and 6, which didn't really shift around that much. Number 8, I moved down Arida. I don't know, it's just the other players seem more likely to win than her. That's all I got for you. Number 7, I moved up Sarah Burkett because she's getting some really positive content and she's really showing herself to be more likely than Arida at least, so I moved up Sarah to 7th place. I never thought I would. Number 6, we still have Swifty. Number 5, we still have Meryl. And now for my interchangeable top 4. Once again, you can really just move these 4 around any way you want, but I decided to move them a little bit. Number 4, I still have Zeus. Yeah. Number 3, I still have Freight Train. And then I switched around my number 2 and my number 1. I moved down Scott at number 2 temporarily, if not only because he's getting a lot of negative content recently, so that's not great for his winner edit. I mean, I don't know if Tough as Nails has a certain way they edit their winners, but that's how I'm looking at it. And yeah, I just think Liz has a better underdog story, and she just seems like she'd be more likely to take the win in the end. So, yeah, that puts Liz at number 1. And I think with that, everyone in my top 4 has been number 1 at some point, except for Freight Train. So, hey, maybe Freight Train will get his moment to shine. But for now, that's all I have for you. Hope to see you next week when I recap episode 6. Goodbye.